and Kravitz, Mary Hogan Pickle.
Excellent. And I do know that Laura is joining us. She said she's walking in from the parking lot. Next on the agenda is our time for public comment period. And there's currently, is there anyone online that wants to make a comment? I see there's just Emily. No, there's no public in the room. So we'll just continue to move forward. We have a couple of regular agenda items, and then the rest of this will be turned over to training. So the first one is the recommendation to approve the minutes of June 24th. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any comments? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent, the minutes have been approved. And then moving quickly along so we can get to the training. Chip, if you could give us an update and we can approve the ACSD bill.
Okay. 3 sets of bills that were read by Jason and myself. First one on July 1st, there was just a general account for a total of $576,836.32. Of that $576,000, transportation made up $160,000, and a lot of mileage, just so people understand, when people submit their mileages, it was about $76,000 in that. Now, I think generally you submit your mileage monthly, but that doesn't always happen, so this sort of accumulated, and there it was. Just so the board understands. Second is the bills that were read on the 15th of July. Again, it was just a general account. There was no payroll. Well, I take that back. There was payroll. The general account was, again, a biggie, $1,251,949. $613,921 was in health and dental. $229,400 was in Breadel. These are round numbers. $65,000 was to Champlain equipment. This is for a new tractor that needed to be done. And $23,580 of that $1,251,000 was for International Baccalaureate. Second was a Vermont Teachers Association retirement amount for $79,924.19, and another payroll of $86,162.81, and another payroll of $195,530.20. Other numbers, folks, sorry about that. The third was bills read on the 29th of July. It was just, there were two. There was the general account for $241,240.45, and a payroll of $313,621.20. A lot of bills. Beginning and the end of the year is always a little different, but there weren't any issues, and Jason, I presume, had none either, so
I have a question. Does this, are we pretty much, are the accounts closed for the 23-24 school year?
are the accounts, I don't know.
For all intents and purposes, they are. There
Okay.
are a few bits of outstanding revenue, for instance, that we're chasing down, but at this point, it's turned from a revenue in FY24 to a receivable in FY25, and so we're just tidying up the books and starting to send things off to the auditor for audit.
But no major expenses are still overhanging? Nope. Thank you.
I move that we accept these bills. as read.
Any other comments?
I
Seeing-
have a quick
Okay, go
question.
ahead.
Just the $79,000, 924 and 19 cents was for the Vermont teachers. Can you just repeat what that was for?
Yes.
Retirement.
Oh,
Retirement, yes, I'm sorry. I was trying to see, I guess it comes under payroll, but I don't know whether it does or not.
Okay.
That's why,
I just want to make sure I
Payroll.
did it
yeah, it
correctly.
was the payroll.
Okay, perfect.
Any other? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the bills as reported by Chip, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the bills have been approved. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Baker. We have some personnel appointments and resignations. Do you need to say anything at this?
Only that as you probably remember, you enabled me to go ahead and complete summer hiring in the month of July in between board meetings so that we didn't lose anybody. So everybody on this list, typically Suzanne reads them aloud, so I'll leave that to her, is fully processed and approved. We have one step left to do in terms of offer finalization with the last appointment, but otherwise, everything is all set to go.
Excellent.
Yep.
Can I have a motion?
I guess it's before me. Yes.
I move to approve the following personnel appointments and resignations. Ashley Bissett, pre-K coordinator. Andrea Blodgett, paraprofessional. Tina Glide, school counselor. Jeannie Cash, paraprofessional. Craig Delarry, individuals and societies teacher. Jessica Francis, paraprofessional. Charles Gerner, paraprofessional. Jackson Gosha, school counselor. Aiden McCullough, paraprofessional. Sarah Nadeau, classroom teacher. Samuel Standard, ground technician. Kelly Zolly, paraprofessional. A resignation of Justine Grace, a paraprofessional, and Christine Everett, special ed administrator.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lori Heather. Any questions? Steve?
Would Sarah Netto be the same Sarah Netto that was a teacher at the middle school for so long? Is that the same person?
Taught
It's
at,
number 10 on the list.
she taught at Shoreham and was a kindergarten teacher. Her name, she goes by Sally.
Yes, Sally, yes. Yeah.
So it's not Sarah Netto, the
No.
middle school teacher? Okay, just wanted to check.
Any other questions, comments?
Just the way that you read the last one, it sounded like they were both resignations, but the very last one was not a resignation.
No, it's an
appoint
appointment.
Christine Everett.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor, and I'm not going to repeat all the names, thank you, Suzanne, of approving the list as provided by Dr. Baker, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
As per usual.
I'm sorry, okay, thank you, Laura. All right, so that has been approved, your list. Next on the agenda is our board training. So we did that pretty quickly. And at this time, I would like to introduce Judy, Dr. Claire Stein. Yes. And she's going to be taking over the rest of it till the end of this meeting. Tomorrow, we'll most likely have additional folks joining us, administrators and a leadership team. And we thank Jen and Nicole for being here. I really appreciate it. And one of the things I wanted to put in front of folks with the training, and maybe more so tomorrow, is to get board input on having the leadership team really participate as we're discussing. Normally, they provide input when we ask them questions, all that kind of thing. And one of the things that we thought would be really nice with this particular training, since it is really focused on the superintendent, is to have the leadership team participate. And so I just wanted to put that out there. If there's anyone that feels that that's not appropriate, please let us know. Otherwise, I would invite them to participate, today and tomorrow.
No. Question, when you say participate, like, can you give us an example? Like,
Well, give their perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, give
It
their
is the board's responsibility to do.
Yeah,
that.
no, give their perspectives and
So-
input, yeah.
Just
It's
so that-
still it's still all our responsibility. But they could definitely give us, their perspectives and
So
we can listen.
Just a clarifying,
Yep.
so that everyone would understand.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. Yes.
Was it communicated to the leadership team about tonight and tomorrow
Yes,
already?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they've been given an invitation, and tonight was really optional because it's really part of the training. And so I would imagine tomorrow we'll probably see a few more folks. Of course, they're kind of busy getting ready for the school year. Yeah. Okay, so Judy,
I have a
oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
Will there be an opportunity later to talk about the staff's role in the evaluation portion? Goal setting is a little different, but evaluation in a public setting,
Right.
I would
I
like to
think-
know more about that.
Yeah, and I think at this point, we're going to have training and then we're going to define kind of the process going forward. And so, yes, as a board, we can decide, how we want that to happen, right? And what we'd like to have happen. So, yeah, so there's nothing set in concrete at this point in time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm just delighted to be back with all of you. I think the questions that have already been posed are questions that will get answered as we go through the 2 nights of training today and tomorrow. So I realize those of you who know me and know that I'm quite the planner. I am type A as they come. And even though I plan, I realized when I got here that I had 3 documents that I had forgotten to email to be copied, and this throws me out of whack, which you're going to find out in a couple minutes how you function, because we're going to do a variety of things. I promise you I'm going to try to make this as engaging as possible. Those of you who know me know that I sat down, tried to spell out everything that I wanted to say to you, and I'm sure I still left out certain things. But a couple things that I want you to know. And I'm not sure that we've met, have we?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Tell me your name. Laura.
Laura.
Okay, good to see you again. I said hello to all the other board members. So when you hired Mac and Jake to lead your superintendent search, one of the things that you paid for is happening tonight, and that is phase 5. I don't know if you remember hearing about it, but phase 5 is where we come back and we work with you as a board, and the we is me, to look at, now that you've found a superintendent and she's been at it with you since June officially.
Yes.
Now we get together and we look at roles. What is the board's role? What is the superintendent's role? And so when Barb reached out to me and said, would you work with us on looking at superintendent evaluation? Because it's been a long time since we've done that as a board. Of course I said yes, but in planning for this training, what I learned is that phase 5 very naturally flows into superintendent evaluation. So I will be sort of jumping around a little bit. You'll hear me say things tomorrow night that will go right back to what we will have talked about tonight. And so we're going to start with that phase 5 work, which looks at the roles of the board and the roles of the superintendent. And when we get very specifically into superintendent evaluation, one of the things that's important for you to know as a board, and for you, Wendy, to know as the superintendent, and I'm sure you all have already discovered this, you as a board and you as the superintendent are really functioning as a team. You link arms and you work together. Yes, and you heard me say this when we went through the superintendent search. Yes, one of your most important jobs is hiring the superintendent, for sure. So that she can lead the district and administer and administrate the district, and you can govern in the district. But you must work as a team. I bet you already are good friends with Wendy. She knows that she reports to you as a board, but you have to be a team together. And so one of the things that we're going to work on tonight is what are those roles? So I apologize that the header on this evaluation doesn't say roles and superintendent evaluation, but it should. So I'm going to ask each of you to take one of these little cards, and I want you to just write down what you hope, one thing, I know it's hard, but I'm limiting you to one thing that you hope will come out of this training. And the reason I said one thing is because I do have a slight impression of working with your board. One thing that you hope will come out of this PD. And because Jen and Nicole, yes? Because Jen and Nicole have made the effort to be here, I'm going to ask them to participate in that as well. And one of the questions was, well, is leadership involved in superintendent eval? One of the things we'll talk more about tomorrow, because Wendy and I had a long conversation about this. She's trying to be a very open, transparent kind of leader, and she wants her leadership team to understand what's involved in her evaluation because she's responsible for evaluating her leaders. And so that's part of why she invited her leaders to be here. So one thing that you hope will come out of this training about roles and about superintendent eval. Take just a minute to do that. And because I like colors, you don't each have the same color. Okay, not writing a book. One thing. And I'm not demeaning you when I say that, because you will feel me try to limit you in, and it's not gonna feel good, but you'll feel me try to limit you in number of goals, in superintendent goals. It's done very intentionally. All right, who would like to start in sharing the one thing you hope will come out of this training? Who would like to start? Doesn't have to be the first person at the table. I need one person to volunteer.
Jason, yay, Jason.
Okay, Jason,
A clear and thoughtful evaluation process.
thank you. Mary Heather?
A board understanding of the boundaries between board and district office, so we reduce the impulse to micromanage.
Thank you. Steve?
That the superintendent will understand that her role is to remain objective in disputes among different board factions.
Thank you.
Measurable, clear metrics for evaluation.
Thank you.
Work toward a coherent system which can be used every year comprehensively to evaluate the superintendent.
Thank you.
Cohesion between team members.
Thank you.
Right, similar to Laura, clear criteria and metrics for the process.
Wendy?
Clarity. And similar to what was already said, how to identify realistic, measurable goals.
Words also clarity for both board and Wendy about what and how the evaluation will cover.
Thank you.
A clear understanding of roles and responsibilities of both parties.
Thank you. Jen?
to understand the board's goals for the superintendent and thereby those working in the district, as well as to understand how they'll be assessed and evaluated.
Nicole?
Clarity for the board, the superintendent, and for the community as a whole.
Well, I'm done. It's been great. Excellent. Excellent work. Hang on to those. I think we'll put them together in a list because you've nailed it, both for roles and superintendent evaluation. All right, now, if Matt's trained me well enough, I want you to look at something and study it for just a minute. Okay, Matt, let's see how I'm gonna do.
This is a test.
All right. Okay, you may have seen this before.
Is that cheating if he's helping her? I thought it was a test.
It's the second step of training.
Oh, I thought it was a
That's
test.
right. She's an educator,
Show
right?
somebody and then have them do it. Help it, and then by the third step, show them.
Okay,
She used to teach us how to do it.
and. Right here.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, you may have seen this.
So where it says 100%.
I'm so glad you stayed.
I
I'm that C student who needs a lot of guidance and positive reinforcement. So you may have seen this in your life, but that's okay. We're gonna look at it again.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, just study it. Resist the desire to talk for a minute. Can everybody see it? Okay. On your little card there, flip it over and just quietly write down what you see. Now, if you see multiple things, that's okay too. You just write down on the back of your card what you see. Out the way. Okay, who would like to start by sharing what you see? Have a different person start this time. Don't be afraid.
Oh,
Tricia,
no. Sure. It's a beautiful woman looking away from us.
okay? Wendy, what do you see?
Same.
Barb?
And,
Oh, go ahead, Wendy.
and
What-
other things, but I'll
But-
only say one.
Okay.
That's the first,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I
First.
see, the first thing I saw was the beautiful lady, but then if you look at it, you actually see the profile of an older woman with a large nose and mouth and chin down low.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Barb, you see both a beautiful lady and an old woman.
Yes.
Wendy, did you want to modify your what you see?
Oh, I see both.
Okay.
Me.
Tricia?
So yes, I see both, although every time I have to remind myself of where the crone's nose is in order to get that
I had to do the
Picture
same thing.
to click in my brain.
I had to do the same thing.
Yeah, I see both the young woman looking away and the older woman looking down.
Suzanne, what do you see?
So I immediately remembered this when I was like, a young woman. Then the older woman with the nose and the very low chin. And then I'm still drawn to the highlighting above her head, which reminds me of the lion.
Okay. Jen?
A young rich woman and an old crone.
Okay. Nicole?
I see a metaphor.
Jason?
I saw the lion at first because we were zoomed in, and then I saw the young one next.
Okay. Mary Heather?
I saw the young woman first and then the profile of the older woman second.
Steve?
Both.
Laura?
I also saw both.
Pensive thinker,
Okay.
but you have to change your, how you look at it.
Joanne?
I see both women, but I don't see the line.
Okay. I used to be able to see both. No matter how many times I look at this, I only see the young woman.
Interesting.
I know there's an old woman there, but I cannot find her.
Yeah. Yep.
So why are we looking at this? What's the point?
We're all gonna look differently.
Why did I choose to show you this?
Multiple correct answers.
People see what they want to see.
Multiple correct answers, see what they want to see. What else?
I'll come in with different perspectives.
It's fascinating that you can't see certain things, some of us,
Yes.
and that's scary when somebody else is saying, what do you mean? Look at it. And so
Yeah.
that's, I mean, it's disconcerting a little bit.
And I'm willing to admit it to you. I mean, if I was on the board, I'm willing to admit it to you that I cannot, no matter how hard I try. I've looked at it, I've used it in trainings, I sat in my office at home as I put this together and looked, okay, maybe this time I'll see the, I just can't see her. I used to be able to, why can't I not now? But what if someone wouldn't admit it? Okay, so let's keep talking perspectives. So I have a little quiz for you. No right or wrong answers. It's all about you. And please don't start it yet.
Are you playing along?
Huh?
Are you playing along?
I'm gonna,
Let's
continue my
I know you have to leave now. But on this little quiz, it says personality styles inventory. Remember, no right or wrong answers, because this is all about you. You don't have to turn it in. You don't have to turn in anything that you've done so far, although I would like to at least borrow your cards so that we can capture what's on the list. If you would feel more comfortable giving them to Barb, and then I'll get them back to you. But I loved what you came up with on your list, so I think we need to capture those. All right. Look this personality inventory over, and you're going to start, see where it says column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. Work horizontally and just check the word horizontally that best describes you.
So 1 out of each 4.
1 out of each 4. So spirited, tranquil, fearless, practical. Which word best describes you? And just put a check mark. You're not ranking, just which one word in those 4 horizontally best describes you. And it's a forced choice, so if 2 of them if 2 of them match you, pick the one that best describes you. And when you finish, total your checks and mark them at the bottom of each column.
So you don't want to be ranked.
Well,
There's still time to change your life.
I know.
I think, you're shared.
I think this is your file
Oh,
slash shared. I mean,
Okay. If you see something you like, just
Yeah.
go for it.
okay, anybody still working?
I'm gonna move over here just in case you need technical assistance.
No, I think I'm okay.
And you get your own pile of candy now.
Now I have my own pile of candy, which is really what's up.
All right, so you don't have to share if you don't want to, but I passed around a sheet that has the 4 personality styles on it. Some of you will be close between the personality styles. I took it again today. I don't like my results, but they fit me to a T. We are who we are. So I'm just going to ask you to share your personality styles, because if you've had a chance to look at the descriptors, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because I want to keep us moving, because we do have a packed agenda and I don't want to shortchange superintendent evaluation. But I think it's interesting all around the idea of understanding other people's perspectives. And we're going to get into norms. I did decide to take a little time around that. and we'll talk more about that in a minute, but enthusiast, mainstay, taskmaster, and analyst. So you've looked at those. If we had more time, I'd actually ask you to go around and guess each other's personality style. I will start us off just because many of you got a flavor of me and who I am. I know it's been several months, but just to kind of give you an example, I will choose to share mine with you. My highest score was under analyst. That definitely fits me. My next highest score was taskmaster, and that definitely fits me too. I had 11 under analyst and 8 under taskmaster. And I look at those and I think, things to work on. Yeah. And I don't love that that's where I fall, but that is where I fall. So I'm going to just ask you if you would like to share, share. If you don't, just say pass. Suzanne.
Mine were the same as yours, analyst and taskmaster.
Okay, Suzanne, you and I've known each other a long time. Do I find it, am I surprised? No. Which was your strongest?
Analyst.
I was mainstay, 12, and the closest to that was 6 under taskmaster.
Barb?
I had a tie, analyst and taskmaster.
I was mainstay by a mile. Although, as a former middle school principal, I don't know that I easily fall for pranks. So I don't, that part doesn't bug me, but.
And these aren't perfect, but they do give you a flavor. I've had groups say, how come there's a description under taskmaster, but there's not a description under mainstay? I don't know. I didn't write this, and it's not perfect, but it does give a flavor.
Well, I was going to say, I'm mainstay and there's nothing to work on or problem areas, so that seems correct.
Joanna?
Mainstay by landslide, 16, and the next one was 6.
Chip?
Analyst 1 and then was mainstay.
I was almost evenly split between mainstay and analyst, with only 2 outside of those categories.
Which was your strongest?
Mainstay by 1.
Steve?
Perfectly tied between mainstay and taskmaster, 8 and 8.
Interesting. Jason?
I was a 12 on the analyst and then tied 5 and 5 for mainstay and taskmaster.
I am a 11 analyst and 8 mainstay.
Nicole?
Really want to be an enthusiast. Life goal. I'm tied evenly across the other 3.
Interesting.
Me too.
We also share a birthday.
No.
What month?
June 15th,
So you guys are
Gemini.
Gemini, for those of you who are into astrology. So, don't go giving this some scientific, but it is interesting. And if you thought it was interesting, save it, because now you've heard what your fellow board members are. It's just another way of understanding each other, and that's the point. And understanding here are 2 of your administrators. They need to understand you, and you need to understand them. Questions so far? Comments?
I wonder if all school board members took this, whether this would be because of whatever leads you to become a school board member.
Uh-huh.
Whether the analyst and
Yeah.
the non-enthusiast, which is interesting because there was nobody in that.
I know.
Because, you heard me say this, I don't know if you remember it, but you at some point heard me say when you were doing your superintendent search, a school board member is a school district's hardest working unpaid volunteer. I mean, you all put in a lot of hours. And so raise your hand if you're also a board member somewhere else. I mean, up here in Vermont, that's very common. It's not as common as it is other places. So you guys work hard, and you're very committed. So, which is a great segue into norms. you all need to give yourselves a pat on the back. I shared this with Barb when we talked last week. You are in the minority in being so far ahead and having norms for yourselves. Very few school districts anywhere have them. They need to. We're going to look at an article tomorrow about superintendent evaluation, and one of the things that it recommends is that you have norms for yourselves. You all have the governance core. I know that Steve has read it cover to cover. I know that Barb has read it cover to cover. I don't know, and this is not, anything to be ashamed of. I know you all have it as board members. I love the book because it's not like, okay, go home and read it cover to cover. But it does have so many great anecdotes in it that are real life. And one of the things it talks about are the importance of boards having norms for themselves. I took the liberty of taking your norms, which I know you know what they are, but I'm going to give them to you again. These are your meeting norms. And I'll explain to you why I'm giving you a copy of something you already have. And also forgive me for killing a tree for this meeting. Just, you do. And why we're not doing so much more digitally for the purpose. Can I just give you these to pass
Should
around?
I put the board norms on here? I can find them online. Would that be helpful too?
I think we're okay because I'm going to give you something else. Your norms are excellent. And they speak to things that you as a board have agreed to. And I do think, based on some of the things you all wrote on your little colored card, thank you, Suzanne, are maybe not happening even though they are norms that you have developed. I want to tell you a very little story about something I do monthly in part of my life. And that is I work with a school district called the Lee Summit School District. Did I share this with you before?
I don't think
Okay. I led the superintendent search for the Lee Summit School District. It's a suburban district in Kansas City. And they apparently felt good about my work with them. And so for the last 3 years, now going into 4, I work with their basically collective bargaining team. The way they do collective bargaining is like the way very few other districts do. Just like you have norms and very few districts and boards do. The way that Lee Summit does collective bargaining is they have a team. It's made up of board members, teachers, support staff members, and who am I leaving out? Administrators. And they get together and we figure it out together. I'm the facilitator of the group. It's very hard for me not to step into my administrative role, but the assistant sup for HR and I work very closely together. And if I step into that administrative role, he's kind of like, oh, Judy, you're facilitator. Don't step back into that role you did for so many years. But we work together. And it's so neat to hear a teacher say, hold it, we need to think about our support staff, not just in money that they should get, but also in working conditions and so forth. And we work through things as a team every month of the year until April or May. And Team Lee Summit has norms. And those norms are in a tent card in front of every person at every meeting. And the norms are very much like the norms you all developed for yourselves. So I took the liberty of taking your excellent norms and putting them in sort of a bulleted format. So I did not change any of the content of your norms. And Jason, if you don't mind, will you just pass those around? Barb shared with me that you do have nameplates. So I thought you might want to hold on to these. This is very similar to what Team Lee Summit does. Only the members of Team Lee Summit have our names on this side of the tent card. And where we sit at the table, we have our norms. And we try to review them at the beginning of the year, of course, but as a reminder, if we're gearing out of control and people are not remembering the norms, as a facilitator, I might remind people about the norms. So I want to go through them with you so that you can look at your norms, because all I did was maybe take out a little bit of the verbiage and put them in a bulleted format. And some of your norms, you might have a statement that holds 3 actions within it. I took them out and made them separate statements. So I want to give you a minute to look at your norms and look at my version of your norms. You don't have to keep this, but I am recommending that you use something like this, or you put it in front of your nameplates so that through every meeting, you have your nameplate here and you have your norms here. And that maybe part of your activity periodically is that as a board, in front of whoever's watching, you stop and review your norms. Because I heard from several people, as you went through those little index cards tonight, a desire to adhere to the norms that you've established. And I didn't know I was going to hear that, but that's what I heard from several people as we went through the tent cards. So I'm going to shut up and ask you to look between your norms and the bulleted norms, because I want you to see that the content didn't change. And then we'll talk some more. So if time was not an issue, we'd take markers and colored pencils, and I'd have you each decorate the other side of your tent card. We're not going to take time to do that, but the concept is there. You don't have to use what I've suggested, but I would encourage you, if you like what's on here, that you put them in front of your nameplates. But before we do that, questions, comments on the bulleted format versus the written sentence format? I know Barb said you have laminated copies.
I like the bulleted list. You know, it jumps out at you more than actually having this in front of you, I think. Especially if you're in a meeting and you kind of glance at it, I think it's a little easier to, see it and to identify the different norms that we have.
Jason had something.
Jason.
Then I got something.
I thought it was funny as I read through our norms that we had the term as appropriate 4 different times, which makes it seem like we're really focused on propriety.
Yes.
we just have it once here, which is nice. I like that. Like that change.
So the norms we've worked on for a while, since probably 2016 was when we first did norms, and then we've worked on them again. Each time we've worked on them, we've worked on the wording, trying to get them to be more clear, more concise. And also wondering about the numbering of them. Does the numbering piece make them like, number 1 is the most important versus number 7 being the least important? But going to just a bullet eliminates that. So it makes them all have the same weight, really.
Yep.
And each time we look at them, they become more clear, more concise.
I agree with it about the numbering. I think the numbering is a trap. Even though you know it isn't, it does give you some sense that one is more important than the other. And no, that's not really true. But it does depend on the situation. There are times when giving respect in a meeting when you absolutely don't agree is difficult. Now, it doesn't mean you are disrespectful, but it may not be easy.
Any other comments on norms? I'm bringing you a suggestion. And then, after this week, I fly back to St. Louis, but it's a thought. And I, of course, did not know what was going to come up when you filled out your index cards, but I think I heard it there, the importance of respect, because I know that, because I went with many of you, Two Brothers Tavern, and we had a beverage of your choice after the superintendent search was finished. And you're all good people. And good people don't always agree. And so it's important that stuff we're going to talk about tomorrow night, there's going to be disagreement, but we got to get to something we can live with, to consensus on everything you do. And so, being able to call each other out, being able to, and as I mentioned about Team Lee Summit, we go over these. Our first meeting of the year is on September 12th. And one of the first things we'll do at our meeting is review the norms. And sometimes we'll go through at the end of the meeting and say, Tricia, pick one of the norms. How did you think we did on it? Very purposefully. Or I might write out the norms on a little piece of paper and hand around a hat or a dish or something. And Joanna picks one out of there. And which norm did you get, Joanna? Read it. How did we do tonight? It's very deliberate, but it forces us to really hold ourselves accountable. So I won't beat it into the ground, but that's why I chose to bring up the norms. Plus, I hope you'll find that the bulleted norms are a little easier to focus on. It's nothing against your norms, because I already told you I admire so much what you've done that you even have them. So anyway, that's it on norms. Questions, comments before we move along, Joanne?
That just reminded me, the Communications and Engagement Committee has been talking about adding a board reflection period at the end of board meetings. And so that just makes a lot of sense, what just happened there, an opportunity.
Yeah. I think it's actually required. By the new standards.
And you might want to revisit them each year. Do we need to look at them again? And what you just said, Joanna, is maybe that forced cutting them up, putting them in a hat, and everybody take one and speak to how did we do honoring our norms. Okay, first of all, I built in time for a break. Do you want a break? You want to take a 15-minute break? Good? Okay. So let's talk about board roles and responsibilities. And let me regroup for a second. This is straight from Mac and Jake. And these get at, and this was something else that came out from several of you as you shared what was on your little card. Again, I've condensed some of this because you don't need me to talk at you, and a lot of this you know already. But I do think it's an important reminder of what the board roles are. Stuff there.
Do you want me to
Yes.
take and pass? Can do that.
Please. And again, I could have put this up, but I sort of want you to have these to refer back to. There are kind of four main roles for the board. You hire the superintendent. You know my opinion on that. That's your most important job. And you got an A+ on that one. Yay. And you establish policy. You are the governing body. You don't work in isolation. Steve, I'm going to ask you a question. If you would rather not share it with me, with the group, just tell me, no, Judy, I don't want to share it. And you shouldn't feel bad about it. But you and I had a conversation like back in January, I think.
Okay.
We were doing some training for Hannaford.
Mhm.
And you shared a personal conundrum about being out and about at Hannaford's grocery shopping or at a restaurant or at a county fair, something like that, and how difficult it is to be just Steve, a member of the community, but also Steve, a member of at least two boards, and how you handle that. Do you remember that part of the conversation? I should have given you a heads up, because but it stuck with me because it is who you are as a board member and how challenging that is. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about the fact that I'm on the board, I can listen to you, but I can't
Yeah,
promise?
yeah, and how you get approached by
Yeah,
people.
I mean, when you get approached by people, the idea is that they think that you're going to solve their problem. And I don't see that as the role of the board. First of all, there's that whole extrajudicial, you are kind of, you're the court of last resort. And by weighing in on issues, it's very dangerous because you risk that objectivity when you do that. And so when a community member comes to you, you can say, I can listen, but if you're expecting me to solve this problem, I'm not the right person to talk to, because there are channels. And if you don't use the channels, then the system breaks down. And you feel like you can come to me as a person of, I feel in my case, I usually say as a person of privilege, because many of the people that I know in the community are members of the community that have privilege. But it's also important that every voice is heard and that everyone is treated equitably. So those parents that can't show up to board meetings, or they have to have an equal voice. And so the board's role is very much the 50,000-foot role. We shouldn't be involved in the day-to-day operation of the school. And so the conundrum is, how do you stay engaged and active in the community and in the schools and still maintain your objectivity as a board member? Because Hannaford aside, you go into a school, teachers connect with you. They know you from, and they want to tell you all the things that are wrong in the school, and you've got to say, this is not my job. You can't do this, because your one perspective is not the whole story. And I have to be able to hear the whole story. I can listen to what you're saying, but don't expect me to solve the problem.
So if you're in Mary Hogan one day and you're approached, wouldn't you refer them to the principal?
Well, and it depends. If they say that, my kid's having a lot of trouble with this teacher, I would say, have you talked to the teacher? Because you talk to the teacher first, and then you talk to the administrator, and then you talk to the superintendent, and then it comes to the board if it gets that far. But to involve me at this level is inappropriate, even though I'm your personal friend, even though I know your kid, I've heard your stories, but I am not the person to come into that classroom and tell that teacher what to do, because that is highly inappropriate.
Yep. So. And it takes that fortitude, because it's so, on each of your parts, because it's so hard, especially the last thing that Steve just said is, even though I'm your personal friend, we socialize together, we've been on vacations together, but you're asking me to do something I can't do. And so that's where really being cognizant of your roles. So I'm not going to read to you, but I would ask you to take a moment and really read through this, because then we'll talk about what stood out to you. Take a minute and just read through this sheet that says you are a team, the role of the superintendent, the role of the board. And then you'll see on the other 2 pages, expectations that you as a board have of the superintendent and expectations of the superintendent that she has of you. So, board members, what do you see as your roles? Let's start with your roles. Decide what's written here. What do you see as your roles and your responsibilities?
When I'm talking to various people, I usually outline the role of the board as being hiring and evaluating the superintendent, working with policies for the district and setting the budget. And those are usually the three things, like these are our three main things. These are the actual board work. Beyond this, it's a different pathway. So I was interested that budget wasn't listed under role of the board on the first page. And 1 and 4 kind of serving the constituency and articulating school system goals. Hope, yes, we are all here to serve our constituency. And just find it interesting that one of the main roles was kind of that communication and engagement.
Well, you're approving the budget, but it's brought to you by the administration.
Yeah.
So you do have that responsibility, but
Yes.
it's,
And making sure, Chip's reporting out every meeting of the the finances.
Well,
and
I
meetings and,
the reason I do is add these little caveats as to the numbers because, it seems like every month it's, 350 to 500,000 in general account. And then there's these crazy months where it's different. And I look through it and just quickly, because I want to know, because I looked at them, but then I add it up. And so that I just do that for information, even to the point of transportation, and how people are requesting their rightful payments. But you can only do that so much. I mean,
well, and
I think you're right about the budget, but I don't look. I know it could be either way on that. The budget reflects a lot of things, though. It reflects how the board feels about not only what they're going to pay to do, whether it's IB or whether it's anything else, but it also just reflects what we did on negotiations and what we did on other things.
and you want, Wendy, I think you should jump in and correct me if I'm wrong or add to it, but, sure as shooting if you as board members are not making sure you understand the first sign of something that's gone awry, every newspaper is going to say the ACSD board were not good stewards of the money. I mean, I doubt that it made it up here, but the St. Louis Public School Board is all over the news in St. Louis because they've got a superintendent that they put on administrative leave, and there's been misspending. It's a huge school district, 100,000 kids, but they've misspent on transportation. So yes, you have to be aware. Can you add to what I'm saying? Because I do think you kind of walk a tightrope with budget.
The adoption of operating policies to me is in Vermont that comes into play in terms of budgeting because I'm familiar with is that the administrative team presents to you, here's what we're thinking in terms of how we need to operate and what this looks like. And we're helping you to understand those things. This year we'll be bringing forward some ideas about equity-based budgeting and what that might look like and, gaining some consensus about those things. And then as you are approving that budget, to me, that's a contract that you're entering, a three-way contract between the community, the board as a governance body, and the operational team, that this is how we're operating. So I guess that's where I see it in your framework, in terms of, all leading to good financial stewardship that is putting, rigorous education at its forefront.
Mary Heather, were you wanting to say
Well,
something?
I think
I know-
Steve just had his hand
I
up.
thought, I wasn't sure if you had your hand.
Yeah. Well, again, like Trish, maybe you can explain where this is, but I've always seen one of the board's main roles is oversight, and budget, to me, falls under the oversight role. I mean, we're the ones, as you said in the paper, that are going to get pilloried for not being aware of something happening. And so I kind of see pieces of it here in this list of 4, but I don't see it explicitly stated as oversight. And I, for a long time, have been told that oversight is one of our main roles. Like, why do we check the bills? Why do we approve, appointments? Why do we, do some of the, why do we check data on, educational performance, spending, all these things? Aren't those oversight roles? So that's my question, I guess.
Yeah. And I think this is one sample that we're given. I don't mean to sound like I'm sidestepping your question, but this is one tool that we're given by Mac and Jake when we come out and we do phase 5. It should not negate exactly what you just said, and I think Wendy's comment about policy, that's contained within that. These are just kind of the overviews of what your roles are as board members and what her roles and responsibilities are as superintendent. I mean, I think we're having a conversation that's really drilling down to, but we also oversee budget and we also oversee this and that. This is just kind of a umbrella for you to look at that talks about main roles of the board and main roles of the superintendent. So I'm not trying to sidestep, even though it sounds like that's exactly what I'm doing. But I think the oversight of board policy really gets at what your roles are, and certainly that's looking at and approving budget. It's kind of a shared responsibility of CFO, who is bringing you recommendations, and ultimately you're approving those. Just like your superintendent and her team are making hiring decisions, but you can't proceed until the board approves them. They're administrative recommendations, but the board has to approve them.
I mean, the reason that I bring it up is because it does speak to another relationship that has to occur, and that's that the superintendent provides accurate and timely information to the board. So we can't do that oversight function if we're not getting accurate and timely information from the superintendent. So I think it is a superintendent's responsibility to provide that information to the board. And so it was a piece that was missing for me when I looked at both of them from both sides of that relationship. So just wanted to bring it up.
That's fair.
Mary Heather, did you? Yeah, I mean, I guess the way I'm looking at it is this is like, the 50,000 foot level summary of both roles. And that some of these particulars, like approving the budget, reviewing data that is presented by the superintendent, approving hiring decisions, those are sort of the how-to functional things that the board does, but really our role is to